I think the most simplest answer is how do you enable digital traceability? And I think Alcoa principles are in place. What is contemporaneous? What is, how is data being recorded itself? But that's the most simplest answer. Going a couple of levels deeper, what I would think in terms of is how do you train the actual investigators on and the principal, clinicians who are on the clinical trial front on what exactly does it mean in terms of meeting their endpoints, incentivize them to also report the data in the right way, just not to meet the endpoints, but train the investigator and ensure they're incentivized the right way. I think that's one difference in terms of, how do you go over and above just digitizing the process. So I think that's one of my thought process in terms of how do you tackle this challenge. Great question. I think I'm going to take this in three ways. Okay, what is good, what is missing, and what is not good. Okay, so let's take a look at it. What is good is the industry has actually moved a lot in terms of digitization. So your commercial processes, quality processes, training, laboratory processes are all digitized, right? So I think Indian industry has done a fabulous job in terms of bringing it to this level. What is missing today, in my opinion, is the Indian industry is still lagging behind in terms of core shop floor digitization. The number of companies that are actually doing it at scale is still limited. The adoption is increasing as we speak. I see companies taking up batch processing, automation, and all the likes of it. But that's one thing which is missing. And what is so not good about this, and given that I'm operating in the pharma space and trying to see what's happening, is that all of these are distinguished point solutions so disconnected from each other that it's often a challenge to bring the data together given that they're in such disparate systems. So I think that's one of the challenges, but I think overall, this is how, if I had to give my thoughts on the industry, this is how it is. I think what at the stage of preclinicals, what's happening is they're trying to predict, whether a particular molecule is, how does it affect toxicity, safety, and trying to come up with limits of dosage. So when you're doing these simulations, I think what is primary to the simulation is how good is the quality of the data under it. So is the data being controlled through GXP, in a GXP environment, and can you trace back all the data to the right source is very important in terms of ensuring the data integrity for running these simulations as well. So as long as the traceability, auditability of the source data and the data provenance is maintained, that should not be a problem in my opinion, and I think that's the way to go about it. This is the most relevant question to us. This is what we do at Zenopsys. We author INDs, ANDAs, BLAs, all the regulatory submissions, and our AI platform is doing it in record time. So where we are in terms of a company and where we are seeing adoption is also today, it's a tool given to the regulatory writers and the medical writers to help them get their work faster. But I think what it will evolve into is there is still a lot of manual data gathering. There is still a lot of orchestrating where what has to go where, people moving around, think of it, I do not want to call it a paper pusher, but there's still the data, a lot of people orchestrating where data moves. I think the immediate way for it to go is how does an agent autonomously orchestrate the data and then come to the human where a decision is needed. And I think that's the natural evolution of where it is today, instead of just giving a tool to the writers to just author. I think authoring is the first piece and the most low-hanging fruit. But how do you solve the orchestration layer, which, from end to end, from R&D to the actual submission, where the agents are orchestrating it with a human in the loop, is exactly, where I see it heading.